Welcome to Module 1, Basic Terminology. So our goals here are to define some key terms so that you'll be able to both, so that we can kind of refer to some of these concepts as shorthand as we're going through these different modules, and so that if you want to dig a little bit deeper in some of the scholarship around pedagogy, you'll be kind of equipped to understand what a lot of these terms are. So let's jump right in. Our first couple terms here are student and learner-centered course design. So this basically refers to the basic principle that we want to center our course design around the student experience. So what do the students need? What do we want the students to get out of the course? This is as opposed to, and we'll talk a little bit about backward course design, which goes hand in hand with this, but this is opposed to something where if you've taken a class that is structured around, say, we're going to read these 10 books, and that's kind of the structure of the course. We want to get into an idea of thinking about the student and the learner as being the center of our course design. So we're working everything out from there. A syllabus or a course plan. This is basically kind of our roadmap or organizing document for a course. And we're going to talk a lot about what goes into those kinds of things. So what information do you want to include? What kind of policies, what kind of design choices can make this syllabus something that is welcoming and that invites students into kind of a conversation about where this class is going to go. Instructional strategies. So if we think of the syllabus as that big picture, overarching idea, as we dig into our instructional strategies are the tools that we're using to get us to those goals. So we're going to talk about learning outcomes, and the instructional strategies are those tools that are going to get us towards those outcomes or those goals that we want our students to take away from the class. And then assessments is the broad category of ways that we see if we are meeting those learning outcomes, if our students are learning the things that we want them to learn. So this can be things like tests, this can be papers, this can be on essays. We'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the assessments portion. But in broad terms, these are the types of things that students are doing where we can have a chance to see if they are learning what we want them to learn. Metacognition. This is a huge, Ellen and I both love metacognition. So in basic terms, this is thinking about learning. And so, and this is a huge part of students really reflecting, internalizing, thinking about what they've learned, how they've learned it. And I cannot stress enough how much I think metacognition really helps us get to those kinds of things that students will take with them for the rest of their lives. So reflection, doing sorts of reflection assignments, journaling, reflection essays, things like that, getting students to think about not just what they did, but why they did it, how they did it. And then self-assessment, that's going to be the process of asking students to think about how they did. So instead of it just being the instructor assesses and the student gets feedback, having it be something where the students are part of that process and they offer their own feedback about how they are doing in a class. And this can take a variety of forms, perhaps a test wrapper, an exam wrapper, where after they've taken a test, they'll do a little bit of work reflecting on what did they do well, what were they not prepared for, how might they prepare better next time. So that is all under the big overarching category of metacognition. Evidence-based pedagogy. So this can feel a little bit SOTL, which is usually how we pronounce this is Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, often gets abbreviated as SOTL. And this is the broad category of research that has been done about pedagogy. And so this can take a variety of forms from both quantitative and qualitative studies. You can get things like 300 students were asked to perform this task and 150 of them did some sort of a metacognition exercise. What did they retain a semester later, right? So you can have things that are very traditional study form, but you can also there's a variety of journals in the classics world that do different types of scholarship of teaching and learning. So someone talking about a gamified class, something like that, can also fall into this category. So when we talk about evidence-based pedagogy, this is not just us kind of off the cuff saying what we think is best. Ellen and I have a lot of opinions, but evidence-based pedagogy really suggests that we are going and looking at what actually works best. And there's an entire school of research that goes into this kind of thing. So a pet peeve of mine is that I think there are people who dismiss pedagogy as being not serious research, or that pedagogy is sort of softer or less like a serious, rigorous type of thing to be engaged in. And pedagogy, when we talk about best practices, a lot of these are things that come from people studying how students learn best, what effect these decisions that we make as instructors have on the students. Modality. This is a word that popped up a lot in the past year or so. So basically talking about how the content is being delivered. So that can be synchronous versus asynchronous. So a live class meeting as opposed to something that students are doing. So this workshop is asynchronous. We're not all in the same place at the same time. Whereas synchronous would be something where everyone is in a classroom, or everyone is a Zoom meeting and we're all doing things at the same time. Modality can also refer to how we're interacting with each other. So in person or face-to-face versus remote, online, or hybrid. Hybrid or high flex is something that got a lot of press in the past year as well, as a lot of people were suddenly switching into an online format. High flex is a catchy phrase for hybrid flexible. So this is talking about some combination of that in-person and online. That also involves synchronous and asynchronous. So it gives students a variety of different ways that they can participate in the class. And there's some more resources available about that if that's something you want to learn more about. And finally, if there's anything that we haven't included here that you would like us to talk about, any terminology, anything like that, please feel free to let us know. Put it in the comments, put it in the Discord, and we can expand this with more terminology if there's things that we aren't sure about.